Isn't it good to know that no matter where you are, you're covered? Covered by a company owned by Vincentians that understands your unique insurance needs. At Metrosint General Insurance Company, we've invested 50 years of service to guarantee that you have the peace of mind that you deserve. When it comes to motor vehicle, property, employer's liability, business insurance, and much more, we've got you covered. Our professional and friendly staff understands your needs and ensures you understand your options. Metrosint General Insurance Company.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Let's Get Down to Business. We're doing a profile edition and my guest is Shanil Sutherland, who you will meet when we come back from the break.
Isn't it good to know that no matter where you are, you're covered? Covered by a company owned by Vincentians that understands your unique insurance needs. At Metrosint General Insurance Company, we've invested 50 years of service to guarantee that you have the peace of mind that you deserve. When it comes to motor vehicle, property, employer's liability, business insurance, and much more, we've got you covered. Our professional and friendly staff understands your needs and ensures you understand your options. Metrosint General Insurance Company.
This is Let's Get Down to Business. Let's Get Down to Business is a collaboration between IKTV and the Chamber of Industry and Commerce. On this edition, Profile Edition, we have a guest who's all the way in Montreal, Canada, but Vincentian by birth. Her name is Shanil Sutherland. She is a writer and winner of the 2021 CBC Nonfiction Prize. Shanil, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Tony. It's good to be here.
So I introduce you as, well, being in Montreal, Canada, but you're Vincentian by birth.
Yes.
Where were you born here in St. Vincentian?
I was born in Carroll, Georgetown, just a small village in Georgetown. So I lived there from birth to age 10 with my grandparents. So I grew up in Carroll before I moved to Montreal.
What do you remember of Carroll?
Some of my fondest memories of just being very free as a child, feeling the sense of community and safety that comes with that community and being able to roam and be as wild as I wanted to be with my friends and my siblings and my cousins. I remember there was this banana field that we spent a lot of time playing in, and I have very fond memories of going into that field with my friends and playing all sort of games and just getting up to no good, really. But, there's that safety that comes with a small community, like I mentioned, that you don't necessarily get when you come to a large cosmopolitan city like Montreal. So, so that's what I remember.
Would you say, Shanil, that you were poor? Your family was poor? Would you describe it as that? I'm talking about the Carroll experience.
I think yes. As an adult looking back with adult eyes, yes, we were poor, but I didn't feel it as a kid. I think the adults in my life did a great job at hiding the fact that we were poor. I never wanted for anything. I never felt deprived of anything. So yes, I think we were poor, but I never felt that as a child that we were.
And clearly, the experiences coming up in a small community, as you were alluding to just now, were very rich, and you've taken them with you.
Mhm.
What about school here? You went to primary school here, obviously. Um, what stands out in your memory about primary school in
Um,
Georgetown?
The teachers, I don't really remember specifically what teachers I had. I don't really, I have an impression of them. I remember the teachers were very dedicated and very attentive. I think that's where my love of writing came from, is just the teachers that were in that, I went to Georgetown Elementary School. So they cared about getting us, writing well, and about teaching us everything that they could, given I guess, the limited resources they had. I remember we had a very scary principal at the time, but I also respected him because he was a strong, like, very brooding man, but never unkind and never cruel. But he was very stern. So I remember him very vividly. And also just the vendors that came around at lunchtime with most of them had like a little song that they used to lure you to buy whatever it is that it was selling. Sometimes it was popsicles, sometimes it was candies. So I
Right.
do remember some of those songs, and yeah, like I think very, very vividly, even as a young child, like hearing those songs and just carrying them with me throughout my life. So yeah, I think those are the things that stand out to me the most about school, and they show up in my stories as I write them. So yeah, they made an impression.
You seem to have had a very happy childhood, at least the first 10
Yes.
years.
Yeah.
Your grandfather and grandmother were the ones who brought you up.
Yes. Yeah, my maternal grandmother and grandfather raised us. So my mom, at a young age, she moved to Montreal, leaving her two young children behind. She came to Montreal to set up her life here, and so my grandparents decided to raise us and two other children. There was my mom and her sister that came here. One, I think my aunt came here first, and then she brought my mom up. So yeah, my grandmother and grandfather were very prominent figures in my early childhood, and for a long time, I thought of them as my parents. I didn't realize I had this mom, because my mom left when I think I was turning 4 at the time. So I didn't have a lot of memories of her.
And then later you would connect with your mother, but we'll talk about that a little further down into the program. But your schooling, I'm going back to that, and you mentioned reading.
Hmm.
Of course, now you are a writer.
Yeah.
Would you say that very early on in your school career, you took to reading particularly?
No, I think in my school career, I was being introduced to the tools that allow me to read and write later, because I was very young, right? So we weren't reading any literary pieces, and I don't remember a lot of the stories that we were reading. I remember the biblical stories that I learned in not necessarily school, but Sunday school.
Hmm.
The whole reading and writing and storytelling comes from my grandmother, who was an amazing oral storyteller, at least in my eyes. We didn't have access to a lot of books, not books that were leisurely used. All the books I had access to were in school, and those were mostly copy books, and you had to share them with other students. So I didn't have
Right,
access to books. So my grandmother, and we didn't have access to toys. Like, toys were limited where I was growing up.
right.
So we did all these luxuries that we have nowadays. I didn't have them. So my grandmother had to find ways to keep us entertained, and she had 4 kids that she was raising, plus other kids in the neighborhood. Like I said, we're very much a community, so everybody was in our yard. Kids come into our yard, and so she'll tell us stories. She'll tell us very popular stories from the Bible, or she would invent stories. So I think that's where my love of reading my love of storytelling comes from. It came from her, and then that developed into a love of reading once I had access to books.
I like how you said she'd invent stories. So she was a person, although not writing, she was definitely a creative person, giving you those fictional type of experiences, and I
Yeah.
suppose drawing you in, capturing
Yeah.
your imagination. Can you remember some of those stories at all?
So none of the ones that she invented, I don't remember any of those very well, but I do remember her telling us about Alibaba and the 40 Thieves.
Right.
And so that's a very popular story. It's a worldwide, it's known all over the world. But she would invent, like, she would change something in the story, even if it's just something to add a bit of comedy to it. So she'll change that famous that famous password that opens the cave, the open sesame. She would change that to something maybe, I won't repeat what it was, but something a little
Right.
vulgar, just so that we can
Right.
all
Right.
laugh, But
Right.
and she would do that, and then I found myself inspired to do the same. So when she would tell us a story, I would go off and in my imagination change something about that story, and then go and tell her. I'd be really excited to tell her my version of the story or what I've changed about it. And so yeah, in that way, I think she was a very creative person, and she had to be. She was raising 4 children. She was a grandmother raising 4 kids that weren't hers. So and she had already raised her 4 kids, so she had to get creative, I guess.
And she had to keep you all not just occupied but happy,
That's
because
it.
I imagine, as you say, although you weren't aware of the poverty because you felt, you had a rich experience,
Yes,
but certainly she had to distract you all from not thinking about what you didn't have.
exactly.
And I think the story. But let's also look at that oral tradition of storytelling. That's very African, isn't it?
It is, yes, yes. And you know what? It's indigenous as well, so it's not just African. You come across that here in Canada. There's a lot of there's a rich tradition of oral storytelling. I don't know where she got it from. My grandmother was she was half Indian, half Scottish, so I assume it's something that was passed down to her somehow, or maybe maybe she was just a creative person. Maybe she was just a creative person, and who knows what she would have become had she been given the opportunities, to move out of that small village.
What was your grandfather doing all this time?
He was our main provider. So my grandfather was out doing whatever he had to put food on the table. He didn't have a strict job. I remember him being a carpenter, a mason. He grew mangoes in our land in the mountains. He was a fisherman. One of my favorite memories of him is that he made chains for dogs and cattle and for cows.
Mhm.
So we had this bench that he had built under a breadfruit tree in the yard, and he would sit there and use his pliers and just his hands and shape metal into chains that he would
Right.
then sell. So yeah, he was an everyman. He had a lot of skills, and he did whatever it took to put food on the table.
So he brought in the cash,
That's it.
basically.
Yeah, I wouldn't say cash. I think a lot of the times it was just going and trading something for whatever produce or crop somebody else was.
Bartering, you'd call it.
That's it. Yeah,
Mm.
that's it. That's exactly it.
So that first 10 years, I guess, were very instructive years for you, and as much as they were formative,
Yeah.
you're now migrating to Canada,
Hmm.
and you're going to meet your mother for the first time after, that long separation.
Yes.
Was she a stranger to you? Did you feel as if it was flesh and blood?
I didn't know her. When my mom came, I think I spoke to her maybe 3 times on the telephone, because a lot of the times she'd call and she'd speak when we were in St. Vincent. She'd call and speak to my grandparents. There's not much, she would ask us to come on the phone, but I had no sense of who this woman was. And like I said, I thought my grandmother was my mom for 10 years. And then I was just suddenly plucked from the small village and put into this situation where I'm told I'm going to be living with this woman, and then meeting her for the first time. And she was a complete stranger. I didn't have a lot of preparation for that meeting. Like,
Mhm.
my mom wanted us, and my grandparents had no choice but to send us when my mom was ready, rightfully
Right.
so. But yeah, she was a complete stranger, and it was hard. Like, I didn't want to be there. I wanted to go home. Those first few months were very difficult for both of us. Having a
Describe to me the moment you landed and you cleared immigration and so on, and you coming outside for the first time. You finish the airport formalities and
Yeah.
you are going outside, as it were, to meet your mother. What was it feeling then? What was going through your mind?
Um, I was scared.
Hmm.
It's even the airport itself felt bigger than anything I've ever experienced. So I was scared, but also protective, because one of the things my grandfather said to me was, take care of your sister. My sister is younger than me, so there's this sense of making sure that she was okay. So I was a child myself, so I was terrified, but also
Hmm.
having to, this heavy responsibility over me to make sure that my sister was okay. And then the vastness of this place, this city.
Hmm.
Um, And then added to that, I stepped outside the airport. And although it's like the height of summer in August when we arrived in Canada, it's the height of summer. For me, it was freezing. We were not
Mm.
dressed for it. We were wearing tank tops and shorts. We were dressed as Vincentians, the
Mhm.
way I would have been, what I would have been wearing in the village. So I was freezing and just standing there, just waiting in the cold in this vast new environment, and then having to protect my sister from possible dangers that I didn't know, like I
Mhm.
was so scared and confused. So yeah, that's what I remember: cold, scared, and confused. Were my first impressions of Canada.
We're going to hold it there and take our first break. And when we come back, we're going to continue your journey, story about your journey. So let's just take a break.
Keep calm. We're online now. Thousands of local content for your viewing pleasure. Live. Boom. IKTV. Tune in. Get interactive. Get involved with WhatsApp or Instagram. Interact live. Party from home. Subscribe, follow, send us your voice notes. Check us out on Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, or call us live in studio. Be where the world is going. Stay home and connect online. Boom 1069, IKTV. Join the evolution. It's all about you. Connect now.
Isn't it good to know that no matter where you are, you're covered? Covered by a company owned by Vincentians that understands your unique insurance needs. At Metrosint General Insurance Company, we've invested 50 years of service to guarantee that you have the peace of mind that you deserve. When it comes to motor vehicle, property, employer's liability, business insurance, and much more, we've got you covered. Our professional and friendly staff understands your needs and ensures you understand your options. Metrosint General Insurance Company.
This is Let's Get Down to Business. My guest on this profile edition is Shanil Sutherland. She's living in Montreal, Canada. She's Canadian, Vincentian by birth, and she is a budding writer. And it's in that vein that I'm going to sort of conduct this interview. But before, let's find out a bit more about Shanil and her journey. Shanil, how did you get to start to feel that daughter-mother relationship develop? How did the stranger part, start to
Um,
disappear?
so it took time. It was gradual. It didn't happen. It didn't happen overnight. And my mom was working so much that we didn't have a lot of time in those first months to get to know each other and to develop that relationship. I think what helped is that I knew my aunt, because my aunt had made trips back to St. Vincent, to Caratal,
Mhm.
even when she was living in Montreal. So I got to know her. So I had that connection to my mom through my aunt. So I spent a lot of time with my aunt and speaking with her, and she, I think, did very well at bridging the gap between my mom and I, my mom and me. And my mom was she's the kindest, she's amazing. She's the best, one of the best people I know. So I think
Mhm.
her patience, and she does not stop. Like, she would do anything to form a relationship with me. Taking us to fun places, making sure that we had that connection with, even in a big city like Montreal, making sure that we were living beside people that we knew. So, getting a place where we had access to my aunt and my cousins, and ensuring that we had that connection, and then using that to form a relationship with me. I think that's how we got over it. And I remember it being very quick Once I realized that she was this good person and I was in no danger and I didn't have to protect my sister from her, it was a quick build up on our relationship
Were
from
you
there.
calling her mommy?
I was, yes, but that I was instructed to, not because I
Right.
wanted
But
to.
did you find it strange? You know, the words were kind of not coming out of your mouth very
Yeah.
smoothly. It was like very awkward.
Yeah, it was awkward at first, but I
Yeah.
think repetition after a while, it's like it's what I knew her as, and I didn't really I knew her name, but it was that didn't feel natural to me.
Yeah.
So the word mommy was something I was used to, and I called my grandmother that. And it's funny because I would call my grandmother mommy and my mom mommy, so they were both mommies to me. So
You know, go ahead.
no, so yeah, it was strange, but after a while, repetition I think allowed us to get there to a place where it's now natural for me to call her that.
Yeah. The reason why I'm spending a little time on this particular part of your experience is you're not by any means, you know, the only person. It's not an unusual occurrence,
Yeah.
especially in that day for children to be left behind, to be brought up by grandparents, and later reuniting with their mother or the full set of parents.
Yeah.
So it's interesting for others who are listening to this interview to hear what somebody who's been in the situation, how it felt and how you made the adjustment. Tell me about school in early school in Toronto, not Toronto, in Montreal.
It was again scary. And like the school, even the elementary school here was massive compared to the elementary school that I went to in primary school I went to in St. Vincent. So I did my last 2 years of primary school here. And that was in itself an experience because, I go into school, I sound different. My mom wanted to give me some sense of home. I look different because she did my hair with the beads that we usually put in our hair and the braids in St. Vincent. And this caused me to stand out even more. So I had this thick patois accent, and then I had these beads in my hair. I was a new student, so naturally, as kids, that was all of these things made me kind of the target for bullying, for people making fun of me. So yeah, that first year was really hard. And my story, that one actually deals with one of the relationships I formed with one of the white girls that I had met during that during primary school in Montreal.
Right.
So I was the subject of bullying a lot in elementary school as a result of my being this different person. And everyone in school already had their tight groups, right? Like they already had their
Right.
friends. These people came up together. They went to school together. I was not one of them, and they made it very clear to me that I was not.
And also, you are now encountering lots of white people at this stage.
Yes.
Any form of discrimination, racism? Are you detecting that just yet?
I don't think I was detecting it. There was this sense of otherness. I knew I wasn't one of them, and it's not just so there's white people. It was also this new language. A lot of them spoke French, so they can say things about me in a language, and they're talking about me, but friendly to my face, and
Yeah.
it can all be right in front of me, and I didn't know what they were necessarily saying. I remember one girl coming over and like flicking my braids in elementary school, and saying something very I don't remember what it was, but it's just like I think it was something along the line of like I'm primitive, like that's how I recall it, because like this is something that they weren't used to. And yeah, and she was white. A white instructor also told me, one of our teachers told me that I was interested in the stars because we had a lot of stars in St. Vincent. When you look up at the sky in St. Vincent at night, you can
Yeah,
see
you
almost
see
the
that.
whole. Not here, but I was interested in stars, and I had mentioned I wanted to go into science, and was told no, that's way outside of what I can accomplish. And this was a white teacher telling me this. So yeah, I did feel it. I didn't know what it was at the time, and obviously when an adult says something to you at that age in a strange space, you kind of take it to heart. So yeah, who knows what would have happened had I not listened to them
Yeah.
and followed
But
my path.
But all this time, are you homesick, or are you more or less made up your mind that this is what your life is going to be, and so you're just going to dismiss that homesick feeling? What
I
what
was
was? Go ahead.
I was homesick. I remember feeling homesick, but also there was a point where I realized that's not gonna like it's not gonna change. I'm not going
Right.
home. This is my life now. So I
That's what I
remember
was getting at. Yeah.
yeah, I'm sorry, I know I interrupted. But there was this so there was the homesickness, but then there's this resolve that okay, this is my life. And then trying to figure out what it is I needed to do in order to get over that homesickness and make something out of that life. So I had that dual battle going on in me at that time. But also how do I make the most out of it? Because at this point I'm already realizing I'm already kind of conscious of the sacrifice my mom had made leaving two kids behind, and like I can see her sadness. So I think that
Mm.
that was part of the reason. Like I didn't know her, but I didn't want her to be sad because she was, like I said, she was kind to me. She was not a monster in any way. She was the best case scenario I think anyone in my situation can end up with. So it's just also making sure I'm not doing anything to hurt her and just figuring out how best to move forward from where I am now.
What's drawing you to writing at this stage, if at all you're being drawn to writing? What were the stimuli?
I didn't start really getting into writing until I was in high school, the middle of high
Mm.
school, secondary school. And what drew me to it is a teacher, actually. I think she saw that there was a lot of conflict in me. She was my English teacher, and
Mhm.
I think she can sense a lot of conflict in me because even at that time, I didn't have a lot of fixed friends. I drifted around a lot with my group of friends, and that's because they're your friends one day, and then you find out they're not the next day,
Mm.
for whatever reason. So I spent a lot of time with this teacher at lunch, on our breaks. I'd go up to her classroom, and she was from Portugal. She had moved to I believe she had moved to Canada from Portugal. So she had her own stories, and she was very open about her experience, sharing her stories, and then I started sharing my stories with her. And then she handed me Maya Angelou's "I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings" and told me just to give it a read. And
Right.
I think that book is where that spark for wanting to write started in me. It's because I read the book, I realized within the first few pages that here's a story that's not so different than mine. Maya and her brother were put on a train and sent to live with her grandparents. So I recognize myself in the two characters, Maya Angelou and her brother, and was completely taken in by this book and wanted. I remember going to her and my teacher after I had finished reading the book and telling her, I didn't realize people wrote stories like this, and now I want to write my story. And she encouraged me. She's like, "Yeah, then you should. Why shouldn't you?"
So that completely was relatable,
Yeah.
and I guess that may have awakened the storytelling that you experienced early on with your grandmother.
Yes.
So that's where the flame started to burn
Yeah.
again. So what was your journey in after that in terms of the literary part of what we're going to discuss going forward in this program? You read When the Cage Bird Sings, or
Hmm.
why the what's the
I
title
know.
again?
I
I
know
know why
why.
the cage. I
Yeah.
know why the cage bird sings.
Yeah.
Yes, and the passion is alight,
Yes.
and you've got this teacher encouraging you.
Yes.
What were some of your early writings after that?
So she was encouraging me, but remember, I'm in high school. So I'm distracted by all thing high school, boys and parties,
Mm.
and I'm still trying to figure out who I am. So it didn't really, I was excited about the book, but it didn't really take off right away. I didn't start writing immediately. If I was writing, it was more short poems, more for myself. And a lot of it was just dealing with, I think I was afraid I was going to forget um, St. Vincent. I was becoming
Okay.
afraid of that even at that age. So I call them poems. I don't know if they are, but I would write
Mm.
something, the comparison poems between St. Vincent and Canada. We have the fall here. We don't really have that there. So
Right.
it started with small poems, not very good. And no, I didn't keep any of them. I don't know
Were
where
you
they are
showing
now.
anybody these things, or you're just writing them for yourself?
I think I was using them as a way to make friends at that point. I
Mm.
remember we had started this high school trend where everybody would write a poem and we'd share it with each other. And mine weren't very popular because they were about really serious adult things that these other kids may not have experienced. So
Mm.
no one really cared for them. So I stopped sharing them after a while, and now they're lost to history. I don't know where they are. But so it started with that, just writing these small, short poems. I think my big step into writing anything longer than a poem was my school hosted and I think Canada hosts amongst the high schools, a public speaking competition.
Right.
And the same teacher, Mrs. Martin, that was her name at the time, she encouraged me to write something, and I did. And while most people were writing about, things that they thought they should be writing about, a lot of them wrote about, not necessarily racism, but they're more heavy subjects. I decided to write a funny speech, and I wrote about the use of pickup lines. Because it was very heavy stuff coming in. We were practicing our speeches in class, and they were very heavy and not very.
Right.
I wasn't really engaged with them because we were all so young. So you can see most of the class wasn't engaged. But then I got up and I did mine, and everybody was just they were doubled over in laughter. So
it was like stand-up comedy.
it was like doing stand-up comedy, and it was such a sense of relief for me because before that I was this drifter. I didn't have any fixed friends. I didn't have anyone I can say was my actual best friend. I tried to fit in with everybody, but I fit in with no one really. So I think this first step into writing and comedy, people started, I guess, relating a little bit more to me, and they're like, that's where the whole journey started. I had to perform this in front of the whole high school, and that opened up, my group of friends a little bit more, and I think that's when I started feeling any sense of becoming.
So your confidence grew.
Yes, yeah, my popularity grew as well.
Your popularity grew. You started to believe that what you're writing on paper can actually entertain others, and not just entertain, but inform, instruct, whatever the case is. So you started doing what after that speech? What other writings were you then busy doing?
So then from there, so that was like right at the middle end of high school. From there, I went on to work on the high school yearbook. I became editor of the high school yearbook because this same teacher pushed for me to be editor. She spoke to our principal and told him there's this, this is something I'm interested in and we should nurture it.
But she saw the talent in you, obviously.
I think so, and I don't know why, because looking back at some of the things I wrote even then, like just for her class, like things that are more educational pieces that you had to submit, they weren't very good. So I think whatever she saw in me was from our talks, not necessarily from what I was writing at the time. But she saw something there, and I'm very grateful to her, and I've kept in touch with her all these years. But so from there, I went on to be the senior editor of the high school yearbook, which meant I was editing other people's work that they sent in to be included in the yearbook and writing my own. And then when I went on to college, that's when I really sat down and started writing mostly stories about my impressions of Carrot Hall. So I wrote stories about my grandfather fishing and taking me to the market with him, my grandmother and I. My grandmother and I going, to the river to wash the sheets on the stones and so on. So I started writing stories, and I think there was a sense of losing myself if I didn't write them down. So I wanted to make sure I didn't lose any of those stories.
Yeah, you are really very conscious about keeping that connection.
Yes.
With Caratel. I mean, I the more I talk to you, the more I realize that that first 10 years of your life was so formative that. It's in your bones and really has driven you through to where you are today,
Yes.
So were they more like essays or were they stories?
I think I would say they're literary essays because they're short pieces, no more than 800 words.
Yeah.
But I think at that point I was also playing around with this idea of literature and like actual written storytelling. So there were essays because most of them are actually true things. They're memories, but I wrote them in the short story form.
Okay. Well, we're going to go to our second break. When we come back, we'll start talking about your formal training in literature. Because I guess after high school, you went to college and then you went off to university. So we'll get into that when we come back from the break.
Isn't it good to know that no matter where you are, you're covered by a company owned by Vincentions that understands your unique insurance needs? At Metrosint General Insurance Company, we've invested 50 years of service to guarantee that you have the peace of mind that you deserve. When it comes to motor vehicle, property, employer's liability, business insurance, and much more, we've got you covered. Our professional and friendly staff understands your needs and ensures you understand your options. Metrosint General Insurance Company.
This is Let's Get Down to Business. I am chatting with Shanil Sutherland. She is part of our whole Vincentian reality. She lives in Canada, Montreal to be specific, and she's doing us very proud. Shanil, we're going to talk about this prize that you won. I'm anxious to get there, but let's look at your move to college and to university. What made you go hell bent for English literature?
So in the CEGEP here, which is college, it's the year, it's the 2 years between high school and university. I actually went into law. Because
okay.
I think part of me wanted to grab this opportunity that was given to me by my mom and by all the sacrifices that she and my grandparents had made so that I can make something of my life. And law seemed a very attractive career choice. So I went into law and I did 3 years of a program called Law and Society in college, and I was really good at it. But at the end of it, I was not passionate. I had like letters of recommendation to some of the top law schools, but I wasn't passionate about it. It wasn't something I really felt I can spend the rest of my life doing. And I was interested in criminal law, so it's very heavy stuff. And at the end of it, I realized it's not something I wanted to pursue.
So it wasn't you, although
No.
you felt that you were very good at it. You were getting letters of recommendation.
Yeah.
You were given, well, not offers, but you were certainly heading in the
Yes.
direction of some of the top law schools.
Yes.
And you turn away from all of that just because of passion.
Yes, I decided to apply for the English literature program at Concordia University here in Montreal instead of pursuing anything law related. And I think it's because even if I wasn't really actively writing stories in CEGEP, because the transition from CEGEP, from high school to CEGEP is very swift, and you're not really prepared for this independence that's offered to you when it comes to controlling your own educational career. So I had very little time for writing stories in CEGEP, and I realized that I felt deprived at the end of it. Like I didn't really have a creative outlet, at least one that I felt was satisfying me. I was a dancer, I was involved in all different kind of things, but I really the call for writing was there. I needed to get back to storytelling. So, and I decided to apply for the English literature degree program in university, and I got in. And then I was introduced to this whole world of literature, and it's been ongoing since. I've never stopped. So yeah.
But I'm going to go back to this decision that you made not to pursue law and go hell bent for literature. Just being driven by your passion. Did you ever consider which was going to be more rewarding financially? Was that part of the consideration at all?
Not only did I consider it, I was constantly reminded of it by adults, by guidance counselors and the educational guidance counselors in CEGEP. When I was making the decision, they were very vocal about that. What I'm lucky in is that my parents, my mom and my stepdad, were very supportive of whatever made me happy. So all of these adults outside of my family were telling me it was the wrong choice. My teachers were saying you're being silly, go into law and then write on the side. But my mom was very supportive of whatever it is I did. I think she was just happy that somebody was going to university in the family. I was the first one to graduate university in our family, so she was just really excited about that. So yeah, I there's obviously, you don't graduate university with a literature degree and then you apply to be a writer. That's not how. That's one of the things that don't happen. So with law, I had more. There was more opportunities for that. But I just once I had set my mind on writing and literature, that's there was no going back from there. There's no stopping me.
It's pretty brave, because there are a lot of people who come to those junctures in their life
Yeah.
where they have to make a decision, and the decision is a heavy duty one, like what you went through,
Yeah.
and very often they would go for the one that offers the job security
Yes.
and the path, the trajectory to owning a home and bringing up children and that sort of thing. But I find it interesting that you took the path less traveled.
Well, the thing is that for most of my life, I didn't have much control over what happened to me. I was plucked from my village without my permission and placed in a foreign place, given to this woman I didn't really know. So I felt like I didn't have a control over a lot of my life. I was discriminated against in high school, based on the color of my skin, things I could not control, the way I sounded. So I think that was like one of those moments where it was my first time making a decision that was purely my own, based on how I felt and what I wanted. I wanted to I wanted to pursue writing. I wanted to pursue literature. I wanted to become more familiar with the great works. And this was the only way I was going to get there, because if I had gone into law, I would be reading massive law books. I would not have time to invest in reading as many literary books as
Scholars.
I wanted. Yeah. So this was it was a hard decision, but it was an easy decision for me to make in the end.
So let's talk about some of those literary scholars that you studied.
Yeah.
Were they the classic Shakespeare? What were you introduced to in your literature course?
So I wanted to do a linear study. In the university, you were given that choice, where you can design your studies. So I wasn't exposed to Shakespeare or any of the greats before university. So I had to start somewhere. I had to form some foundation. So yes, I studied Shakespeare and Chaucer, the Canterbury Tales, and Homer, and all of these literary giants that came before. And then I slowly, I made my way across history, and now I'm like right into contemporary fiction and contemporary literature. So it was a very gradual learning. A lot of students they were already exposed to all of this because they knew, I guess, from CJEP or even high school, what it is that they were going to pursue. I didn't have that. So I had to start from zero pretty much when I went into university.
You graduated,
Yes, I did.
and you haven't really looked back in terms of your writing since then. We're going to come up to talk about the piece Umbrella that you submitted for this competition and became the victor. You, I read a little bit about how you were describing coming up with the name, and you were talking about umbrella,
Yes.
AM, and it's something that you and I spoke about, in one of our earlier conversations about. There's a way that we here, certainly in the Caribbean and St. Vincent for sure, change the sound of vowels. We
Yes.
change A's into O's and E's and I's into something, U's into something else.
Yeah.
So your umbrella is a typical example of that.
Yes.
And but you celebrate it.
I do.
So,
Yes.
so tell me about this vowel changing, and why do you think it's something that maybe should be celebrated?
I think I love the lyrical way we speak in St. Vincent. I love this musicality we give to words and language, and the English language specifically. I think part of it is this. It's just claiming the language for ourselves, even just changing something small adds your own touch, and I think it's part of our identity. Like, we're a Commonwealth country,
Yeah.
we have a very rich history of being claimed.
Yes.
So I think this is maybe just our way,
Taking it back.
unconsciously, of taking it back, yeah, and claiming something for ourselves. English is the language that's speaking. It's a worldwide language. It's the number one language in the world. But I think this is us staking our claim to part of English, and also, like, not everyone can understand a Vincentian accent. Like, when we're speaking with each other, not everyone can understand it. So I think in that sense, also just forming our own identity within this world of English. That's how I think when I think of the letters that we change when we speak. That's how I justify it, I guess, and explain it.
Do you find that our vernacular helps you with your writing? Because now you have the exposure to classical English,
Yeah.
but of course you have the foundation of a character upbringing,
Yeah.
and so you understand our vernacular. You're a literary scholar now. Do you find all of that blend gives you an advantage to practicing your art?
I didn't think so before, but if you look at the Canterbury Tales, for example, it's written in English, Old
Yeah.
English, but the language, it takes a lot for you to understand what is being said on page, right? It's not the same version of English.
No.
So English, for me, the English language evolves, it changes. At first, I didn't want to use the accents, the patois that we speak in St. Vincent in my stories, because I felt like it was a weakness. But having read all of these different literary giants that were world renowned, and even just some of the smaller, the less known stories, I realized that there's a strength, and that using that language, or version of English language, it helps, it strengthens my story. I certainly use it a lot now, in anything that I write. I try to keep, if it's a story about St. Vincent that involves St. Vincent, or Vincentian characters, when they speak, you know they're Vincentian.
So it's in there.
It's in there, and I think it adds so much color and so much strength to the characters when I write.
Yeah, it's interesting you'd say that, because we tend to look at the way people speak and put them in a particular class. So it's a very classist thing.
Yes.
And classes in a discriminatory way. And we make fun of. And when I say we, I'm talking about the collective
Yeah.
we. Fun of people who speak not the Queen's English,
Yeah.
pronounce words wrong, like umbrella.
Yes.
And we position them in our minds in terms of their ability. We make assumptions
Yes.
about that. So you're telling me that we should desist from doing that?
Yeah, I don't think you should judge anybody based on something so surface, the surface level thing, right? For me, a lot of the lessons that I learned, that I carry with me, I learned from the Caribbean. Like, I carry a lot of the lessons my grandmother taught me. There's an intelligence, I think, that people don't see, because they choose not to see, because somebody speaks with an accent that they might not consider, the most intelligent use of the English language. But that's on them. Like, if you're not gonna get to know somebody based on this surface level thing, I think it's a problem with them more than it is with the person receiving that discrimination. But I don't know. I find language and accents in general very interesting, because I like to dig beneath it to see what's there. They draw me in rather than push me away from a person. And I just wish everybody were like that, because that's my experience, right? I was pushed away because of my accent, and I was kind of written off as having, really, my future wasn't going to be great because I spoke differently than everybody else. I didn't speak the Queen's English, as you mentioned. So and I mean, I would love to reach out to those adults, especially the teachers that treated me that way, and say, hey, here I am now. What do you think? And just don't do this to kids, because it can be very damaging, because it took me a long time to get here. So imagine if I hadn't carried that discrimination for so many years, I could have been successful in my writing career maybe way sooner.
Yeah. So those are impediments to your development for sure.
Yes.
They're roadblocks.
Yeah.
Look, Chanel, I tell you one thing that when we talk about the Queen's English, I don't know if you've ever been to the UK, but not a lot of people in the UK speak Queen's English. For a matter of fact, I would say the majority of them speak with their own unique, depending on what part of the country they're from.
Yeah.
And some celebrate the incorrect grammar that they use in certain phrases. So I guess as we go along, we learn.
Mm-hmm.
We learn that things that we thought were reflective of us not having ability or not commanding something that our colonial masters did.
Yeah.
It's not an indictment on us.
At all.
You
At
know?
all. Yeah.
Look, we're going to go to our final break. When we come back, we're going to hit this umbrella story. Okay?
Okay.
Keep calm. We're online now. Thousands of local content for your viewing pleasure. Live. Boom. IKTV. Tune in. Get interactive. Get involved with WhatsApp or Instagram. Interact live. Party from home. Subscribe, follow, send us your voice notes. Check us out on Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, or call us live in studio. Be where the world is going. Stay home and connect online. Boom 1069, IKTV. Join the evolution. It's all about you. Connect now.
Isn't it good to know that no matter where you are, you're covered? Covered by a company owned by Vincentians that understands your unique insurance needs. At Metrosint General Insurance Company, we've invested 50 years of service to guarantee that you have the peace of mind that you deserve. When it comes to motor vehicle, property, employer's liability, business insurance, and much more, we've got you covered. Our professional and friendly staff understands your needs and ensures you understand your options. Metrosint General Insurance Company.
You're looking at Let's Get Down to Business. This is the profile edition. On this program is Shanil Sutherland. She's in Montreal. She's Canadian. She's Vincentian. Vincentian by birth and Vincentian in spirit.
Yes.
Shanil, Umbrella.
Yes.
That's the story that you submitted to the CBS Nonfiction Prize.
Mm-hmm.
And you won. You won from a field of how many people?
I believe this year is 2,000 entries.
Right.
Yeah.
And from all over, eh?
Yeah, so it's a Canadian competition, but it can be Canadians living anywhere in the world.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a fairly prestigious prize, isn't it?
Yeah,
A
it's
prestigious award.
yeah, it's one of the, I think, the most popular ones in Canada for a short story. It's definitely one of the most entered ones in Canada. For the CBC prizes are very well renowned in Canada, and usually, from what I'm learning, having run the prize, the people who win are established writers a lot of the times, more times than not.
So you think that would have swollen your grandmother's nose? The winning of the prize.
I think so. I think she would be very proud. Unfortunately, she passed, I believe, just the year before I submitted, a couple of months before I submitted my story, she passed away. but I'd like to think she would be very proud because she was always asking me, what are you doing with your stories? Because she knew that I wanted to be a storyteller. So she was always asking me about it. So yeah, I'd like to think she would be very, very proud of me, and she'd be telling
Tell me
all her
about
friends.
Umbrella then. Tell me about Umbrella. What's it? What's the story about?
So it's a nonfiction story. It's about my experience in high school with this friend, this white girl. The story is set on our high school soccer field on a Saturday. We were trespassing. Without giving away too much, it just follows this scheme that this white friend of mine had set up, where she orchestrated this confrontation between me and one of my crushes in high school, another white person. And in that conversation, she's pointing out all of the things that makes me, I guess, not worthy of him. One of them
Right.
being the look at my hair. It's not real because my mom had put braids in my hair at that time. My accent comes up in the story. The reason why it's called umbrella is because that's one of the words that she would ask me to pronounce. And because I have a Vincentian accent, I would pronounce it umbrella. And, it was just a source of entertainment for her. These words that I didn't pronounce the way that she was taught that they're meant to be pronounced.
Now, I read the story, and it seems as if the matter that you wanted to deal with or dealt with in the story, even as I came to the end, I didn't feel a sense of the matter being resolved. That's deliberate.
Yes. Part of the reason why I left it, I know what happened. Like the fact is that we're not friends anymore. I moved on with my life. She moved on with her life. She actually dropped out of high school. But I wanted to leave it open ended. The ending for me is resolved for me because in the end, she without giving away too much of my character is smoking the cigarette, and she's doing it very slowly while these two white people are standing there waiting for her. So there's this sense of taking back control of the situation, and now she's in control. So for me, that's resolved. But I left it like this because I know that my story is not unique. I've had a lot of people reach out to me to tell me they've had similar stories. People of all ages from all different countries, and what I wanted to do is make sure that I didn't pass judgment on anyone who might be going through the same thing by
Right.
ending it with like this defined ending. I wanted to leave it
Right.
open ended, so anyone who's going through this now, whatever their decision is, whatever they decide to do, they understand that it's the right thing for them. So it's okay for you to make the decision to maybe stay friends with this person,
Yeah.
or speak to an adult about it, or whatever it is that they do. I wanted to make sure that the story did not pass a judgment on them, and
Right.
that's why it feels a little bit unresolved.
And it was not necessarily one of forgiveness
No.
as well. Nor was it one of perpetuating the malice.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean when I am hanging, and I can understand
Yeah.
as a writer why maybe you do that. Are you going to use going forward? Are you going to use a lot of your writings to deal with the question of racism and discrimination? Are you going to widen that to not just color, but people who are different, the gender differences, the LGBT,
Yeah.
gay and lesbian people? Are you going to be an advocate for all people who are discriminated against?
I think yes. I don't think in my writing I can be, because I want to write as honestly as possible. So writing about my experience, I think, is where I can add value there. Writing about the Vincentian experience, so the things that I have experienced and things that my mom and the people that I'm close with have experienced. And when it comes to writing, we have to be careful because we don't want to write, like, I'm not gay, I'm heterosexual, so I can't necessarily understand fully, and I can do a lot of research to understand what somebody who identifies as gay or anything else might be going through, but for
Yeah.
me to write about it, I think is a step too far. So I think I can be
Okay.
an advocate and an ally in different ways.
Okay.
I think just being brave enough to write about the things that happened to me is one step in, I hope, in inspiring somebody else who's different to do the same thing. But I want to be careful with the type of stories that I tell that don't belong to me. I don't have ownership of any of those experiences, so I'd want to not try to write them and in the end, maybe doing more harm than justice to them.
That's perfectly understood. You mentioned to me in one of our conversations about you having an affinity to science fiction.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, I was always interested in space. I wanted to be an astrophysicist, when I first came to Canada, but I was told that it wasn't a career option for somebody that looked and sounded like me. So space has always been this thing in the back of my mind, and sci-fi especially. I find it as this nice sense of escape. These are stories that don't really deal with reality. I like sci-fi because there's some sense of reality in it. There's some sense of what could be in it, but not necessarily dealing with our current reality now. So yeah, Asimov is one of my favorite sci-fi writers. So I spend a lot
Right.
of time reading him. I've actually not read it much sci-fi lately. I've been more experimenting with stories from different cultures, from different people who have gone through different experiences from different countries. So that's my focus at the moment. But in my heart, I'm a sci-fi nerd, and I write more sci-fi stories than I do literary stories, believe it or not.
Do you link those sci-fi stories that you write with anything? Do you blend them with your Vincentian experience?
Yes, I've recently started doing that in the last couple of years. I call them, I guess this is already a genre, but it's urban sci-fi. So sci-fi that deals with the Black experience, but there aren't many I haven't come across many sci-fi that deals with the Caribbean experience. So yeah, I have this story that I'm playing around with in my mind right now, regarding like a sci-fi that's set either in the Caribbean or deals with Vincentian characters. So yes.
Chanel, going forward, do you see yourself just staying as a short story, writer, or are you going to embark on a novel or two?
I've already started embarking on writing novels. I think the reason why I'm doing short stories right now is because it allows you to hone your craft. You have such a limited space to tell an entire story and resolve it. And I think that's a great way for me to fine tune my writing craft. So short stories, I think, it's a good stepping stone into novel writing for me. But I'm already experimenting with the long form, and once I do my first short story collection, the next step is to actually venture into maybe completing a novel.
And in your reading, are you now so you're classically trained, but are you now reading African literature, West Indian literature?
Yes.
That's a journey that you're on. You're broadening your
Yes.
scope.
Yeah, so I just finished a book by a Nigerian writer. I won't even try to pronounce her name, but her first name is Chiluchi, and she was up for one of our most prestigious prizes in Canada as well. So yeah, and African writers, Caribbean writers. I've actually gotten in contact with a lot of Vincentian writers specifically because of the volcanic eruption that happened. There was a writing group that did a fundraiser to raise money. So I was able to meet a lot of them through that, and now I'm in touch with them and reading all of their stories. I took a workshop from one of our writing federation here. By chance, at the beginning of this year, I signed up for this workshop out of the blue. It's my first one in many years, and it turns out to be the person who was leading their workshop was Nigel Thomas,
Right.
a Vincentian from Dixon, just a village over. And so I took the workshop and found out that we grew up in the same place. And so I'm reading his books and his poetry and being in contact with him. And he's been opening me up to more Caribbean literature and introducing me to more people from the Caribbean who write and who have been published.
In all of this, as we we're coming close to the end of our hour. In all of this, the passion is there for the writing. I could tell. That's what we've spent most of this time talking about. Are you making a living from it?
No, and it's funny because that doesn't really matter to me so much. I'm just happy to be in it. I'm just happy to be practicing my craft because, like there's a sense of something missing when I'm not writing. It's a very physical lack of. There's this presence that is just looming that I should be engaging with that I am not. So, but the most money I've made from writing is the prize that comes with the CBC nonfiction win.
And you won't be able to retire on that. So
absolutely not. No, that's a nice bit of savings for a rainy day, but I will not be retiring on that.
So what do you do full time? What do you do to make a living now?
So I work for a software company here in Montreal, a Montreal-based software company with presence across the world, and I'm the director of product marketing. So I'm a marketing executive at this executive. I'm a marketing director at this company.
And how does that blend into your writing? Is that skill of being a marketer, does it conflict or does it contribute to the craft of writing?
I think they complement each other. Product marketing is very much about storytelling. It's about building personas rather than characters, but it's essentially the same thing. It's building this profile of a potential buyer and then writing a story, like your messaging, your positioning, to cater to that the problem that your software is trying to solve for that person. So, and then writing, it's the same thing. You're building a character, and then you're complementing them to that world that you're building, and vice versa. I've always said that writing is not something I want to do where once it becomes my career, that word career, I think it loses its that spark.
So you think I'm hearing it. So you think that you need to keep the passion going.
Yeah.
But if you make it too business-like, then it becomes mechanical.
That's exactly
for want of
the
a
word.
better
Yeah.
word.
That's exactly the word I use. Once it becomes mechanical and this thing I have to get up and and do every single day in order to make a living. Once it's tied to making a living, I think it becomes too stressful and it becomes like mechanical. And I don't want writing to ever be. I don't want storytelling writing to ever be that. I want it to be more free, to write when I want to, when I feel like it. With that said, I am still practicing my craft and trying to come up with a process that works for me, and being respectful of the fact that I have this. I want to say I have this gift without boasting, but I have this gift and I don't want to throw it away. And I know that there are a lot of people who allowed me to have this gift. My grandmother and her sacrifices, my mom and her sacrifices. So just making sure that I'm not throwing away the gift that they gave to me, so I can pursue this dream.
Shanil, mentioning your grandmother is a beautiful way to bring this program to an end, because that's where we started. Yeah. That's where writing started for you.
Yes.
And I think it's quite obvious that your grandmother in Caratel was the one who, certainly drew you into what your craft is today. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. I think we're going to hear great things about Shanil going forward. And we absolutely look forward to it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.
You've been looking at Let's Get Down to Business. My guest was Shanil Sutherland. She's a writer. She's the winner of the 2021 CBC Nonfiction Prize. Do join us the next time Let's Get Down to Business airs.
Isn't it good to know that no matter where you are, you're covered? Covered by a company owned by Vincentians that understands your unique insurance needs. At Metrosint General Insurance Company, we've invested 50 years of service to guarantee that you have the peace of mind that you deserve. When it comes to motor vehicle, property, employer's liability, business insurance, and much more, we've got you covered. Our professional and friendly staff understands your needs and ensures you understand your options. Metrosint General Insurance Company.